Hello and welcome to earlymusicsources.com. My name is Elam Rotem, and today we are fortunate to be able to try out the Schola Cantorum Basiliensis new organ. Together with soprano Perrine de Villers, we will perform and analyze the Virtuosic Venetian motet O Maria by Giovanni Rovetta. The piece that we will look at today has no particular importance in the history of music. We chose it just because we like it and think it's beautiful. This motet by Giovanni Rovetta is found in a Venetian collection of sacred monodies from 1625 called Ghirlanda Sacra. Other more famous composers featured in this collection are two senior colleagues of Rovetta, Claudio Monteverdi and Alessandro Grandi. Let's start by listening to the stunning beginning of Rovetta's motet.
What an opening! Before we get into it, it should be said that this motet was originally written for a tenor an octave lower. We, following what seems to have been a common practice at the time, are performing it an octave higher with a soprano. The text of the motet is a Catholic adaptation of verses from the Old Testament's Song of Songs. The difference being that the female protagonist, instead of being an anonymous shepherdess, is in this case the Virgin Maria. In the first part, Maria is praised for being beautiful and sweet, and in the second part, Maria herself explains that she was blackened by the sun, but also crowned by the sun. In the opening passage, there are some terrible dissonances. First, the ninth, that is perhaps prepared, but not resolved downwards as it should be. Then, the extremely harsh diminished seventh, and then, even worse, the diminished octave. In order to explain these, we have to remember that in the 1620s, as opposed to some decades earlier, some music was composed with many ornaments already written in. This is definitely one of these cases. This is significant, because differentiating between the real notes, which are contrapuntally correct, and the written out ornaments may help us understand the music better. If we take away the ornaments, the filling out of the descending fourth, the repetition of the A in the second bar, the short accento at the end, and the C sharp in the bass, we are left with this symbol progression. While the melodic ornaments are easy to understand, the C sharp in the bass demands a bit of explanation. It seems completely unrelated and is responsible for the diminished seventh. In music from the same time, as well as later basso continuo treatises, we see that when the bass ascends by a fifth or descends by a fourth, a plagal cadence if you wish, one may find a sixth and a sharpened fourth as a transitional harmony. Here, Rovetta uses this progression, but puts the sharpened fourth in the bass. In general, one can say that several phenomena are stacked upon one another here, but more importantly, it makes us see that the tolerance for dissonances has expanded during this period. When Monteverdi used such intervals, it is mainly to support extreme textual content. But here, it seems that they are simply used to amplify emotion. Emotions that can be painfully sad, but also painfully sweet. Let's hear it again and listen also to the next phrase. such triple-time arioso sections became one of the main ingredients of later 17th century monodies. What seems to be evident here, despite it being notated only for one voice and bass, is the trio texture. Thanks to the rather specific basso continuo figures, it is easy to find the missing middle voice. The 17th century trio texture is based on two upper voices that are often in parallel thirds or sixths, and a bass. Let's listen to how it sounds here. As opposed to a monody that needs a basso continuo realization in order to render a complete harmony, the three voices of such a trio are already complete. In this period, it can be found in countless duets for two parts and bass, but also in pieces for more parts, as we showed in another episode. Thus, when such a texture is discovered, it may be used as a guide in creating the basso continuo realization. In the next phrase, Rovetta once again turns the sweet into something a bit painful. He uses a romanesca bass, but sharpens its second step. So instead of having a sweet romanesca, we have a bittersweet one. In the next bit, there is a short sequence. From the point of view of Renaissance counterpoint, one may complain that it is too repetitive and that the parallel fifths between the melody and bass are too evident. But by 1625 this is completely fine and quite charming. Let's listen. The next section is on the text Candida et nigra sum. Candida means both pure or clean, but also literally white. So it is possible to read it as white, but also black I am. Rovetta uses a very traditional word painting technique by having white notes for white and black notes for black. Looking at the rest, we see that by adding a middle voice parallel to the melody, we again find the simple trio texture. Looking at the moving bass line in the beginning, we notice that it repeats twice, once starting on G and once on C. So whatever we will do in the basso continuo realization when the voice is there, we can do also beforehand. I chose to use a syncopated middle voice. Let's listen. Now, on the word considerare, to consider, there is a long and fancy diminution. Often we feel that we understand the composers and their choices, but sometimes less so. I, personally, don't understand why he chose to put such a long and impressive diminution on this not so important word. Moreover, it is accented incorrectly. It should be considerare and not considerare. Let's listen. Interestingly, later on in the piece this sentence is repeated, but there a shorter diminution is used and with a correct accentuation of the word, considerare. We will hear it later. Now comes the text quia decoloravit me sol, because the sun has tanned me or changed my color. Rovetta composed this with music that conveys sadness or misery. To do so, he made use of a framework of descending parallel sixth chords. In Renaissance terms, such a progression was used to convey similar negative emotions. On top of it, he added some syncopations and dissonances in order to further amplify the emotions. Let's listen. Now comes another very fancy diminution, but since it is on the word coronavit, to crown, we understand the reason behind it. It makes sense that such a majestic word would be composed in a majestic and strong manner. This is followed by a simpler and more playful diminution on the word decoloravit. Let's listen. This is, in fact, the end of the text. The rest of the composition is a repetition with some variations. The phrase candida et nigra sum is slightly different, having also another bass now. As we said, the considerare is now shorter and with correct accentuation. The sadness and misery of the quia decoloravit me sol is now amplified by being composed with a descending chromatic line, a stronger way to convey misery or hardship. And the two last diminutions of coronavit and decoloravit were replaced with other diminutions, just for the sake of variety. This is followed by a direct repetition of the beautiful opening section, with an additional majestic plagal cadence at the end. Let's listen and enjoy the variety of the different sections.
This was our episode about this beautiful motet. We hope you enjoyed it. Many thanks to Perrine de Villers for singing so beautifully, and to the Schola Cantorum Basiliensis for the organ. If you want, the full uninterrupted performance of this motet is available on the link below. Don't forget to check the special page on our website with all the footnotes and other extra information. If you enjoy early music sources, consider supporting it on Patreon. Comment, share and like. See you next time at earlymusicsources.com.
Yeah, sweet things.